Hey there, Wolfpack fans. It's me again, Kenton bringing you another episode of Lock on Wolfpack. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the defense's early season grades. I already told you all how the system was going to be in terms of what the grades were going to be and how the grades were going to be distributed. With that being said, we're going to break down all of the grades of the defensive units. And today, before we get into today's episode, I've got to let you know that it's brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. So, folks, we're going to be getting into the defense and all of their grades again. We're going to go through the system for the grading, as well as how I came across or how I got to the point where I thought that the grades are, or how I got to where the grades are what they are. I'm sorry, words are beating me up today, but I'm fighting back anyway, all right? Thank you all for sticking with me on today's episode of Locked On Wolfpack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, folks, I'm looking at the units here, and the units are going to be broken down pretty simply. Defensive line, linebackers, secondary. Now, I told y'all the grading system yesterday, but I'm going to reiterate it just for anybody who didn't catch yesterday's episode. A means outstanding or better, right? If you're being great or you're darn near perfect, that's A plus territory, all that good stuff. But that's A, outstanding or better. B, good. You've been good, right? Like there's some area or areas that you could improve, but for the most part, you have done the job asked of you and a little more. You've done more than the satisfaction that you're good. C, average, completely mediocre, run of the mill. There are some things you do well, there are some things you do poorly, but all in all, your effect on the game is like, meh. Like we could replace them with the average Power 5 defensive line they do, or Power 5 unit, and they do the same thing. D is bad. D is like, oh boy, this has been tough. It's been tough. I mean, you're not terrible. I've seen something there, but this has been bad. F is terrible. F is you've been downright. Get them off the field. You're stinking it up. That's what an F is, all right? So the pluses and minuses, of course, if you're like good, but you've shown flashes of outstanding, B plus. If you're good, but you've shown, I don't know. This group at times has some real mediocre moments, B minus, et cetera, et cetera. So you get how that grading scale goes. So we're going to do it very similar to how we did yesterday as far as the big guys are going to go first. The defensive line of this defense, the defensive front in this 3-3-5, I'd have to give these big guys a B. Now, originally, my grade for this group was going to be an A minus. But the more I thought about it and the more I said, okay, objectively now, you can't be a homer just because they're defensive linemen, you're a defensive lineman, and you love defensive linemen. The reality is I had to give this group a B. And this was one that, of the defense, of the groups in the defense, this was the one that I kind of had the most problem with, the hardest struggle with in terms of how I was going to, get these grades down and get these grades done. This was the one that was the toughest because I wanted to. When I tell you I wanted to give this group that A minus, what ended up happening was I examined what are the weaknesses of this defense, if there are any, because this has been one of the best defenses in the nation by every metric imaginable. This has been one of the best or the best defense in the ACC by a bunch of different metrics. By all of the ones that are relevant, we're one of the best, period. So I thought to myself, okay, we have played not the greatest competition early, but you can only play who's in front of you. So what's the next thing that I look at? What are you struggling with and how bad is your struggle in that area? One of the areas in which I think is a drag on not only the defensive line, but also the linebackers to an extent, is the pass rush this year is not generating sacks at the same clip as, or not generating sacks at a high clip. But what they are doing is they're affecting passes in little ways, forcing folks off their spot. So it's, I know it's a little nitpicky. I know it's a little to not give them that A, but this group has been good. This group has been good. They just haven't shown me enough outstanding to where I'm like, because to me, outstanding in the 3-3-5 is with your three, you can get home at a good rate. With your three, you can make quarterbacks uncomfortable at a good rate. And they do in rare moments, but it's not enough for me to move them out of B range. But this defensive line has been good. Oh, also, I forgot to include the specialists are going to be on here as well. The special teams units going to be on here as well. But anyway, the defensive line gets a B from me. And then we go to this linebacking core. This highly vaunted, highly touted. The backers were what everybody was ranting and raving about, and everybody talked about it. I'm gonna tell you. This grade for me was the easiest. This grade for me was the easiest because in watching them and seeing what these linebackers are doing, it's not even a thought of like, oh, what did I expect them to do or what did I hope them to do? It's literally just what are they doing? They're looking like one of the best in the nation. They're looking like they are everything that they were touted to be. They're looking like that coming into this season. That's just what this is. That's just what this is. This when I break down these numbers for y'all at the end of the episode, I want y'all to truly understand that this is where these grades are coming from and all that good stuff. This linebacking core gets an A. They've been outstanding. And yes, there was the moment in the ECU game where Isaiah Moore looked really bad in that man coverage that set them up for the win on the running back side. I want to say it was a out route to the short side of the field. They were on about the left hash. Yes, I understand that was a bad moment. I understand that wasn't a good moment. But the totality of what this unit has done cannot be summarized in just that one play. And when you go beyond that one play and look at everything else that this unit has done, they've been lights out. They've been good in pass coverage. They've been good at stopping the run. They have been, man, I'll tell you this. Remember what I said about the receivers yesterday in terms of they put this team in positions to win games. They put this team in position to make plays. The linebackers are doing the exact same thing, except that as at the linebacker position, you don't count on anybody else to finish that or to make sure that you can finish that play the same way that you would at receiver. They are just doing it. They are just going off. I mean, at the end of the day, when Peyton Wilson comes in and, he has a game where he gets a little banged up, he doesn't play a ton as far as like gets banged up in the ECU game, doesn't play a ton, plays a little bit against Charleston Southern, but then comes out like a man with his hair on fire against Texas Tech. That's what you love to see. Drake Thomas is Drake Thomas is Drake Thomas. I would love to see him return to form in terms of pass rushing, but everything else that he's bought from last year, he's bought it. He's bought it. And again, just because I said he has a area to improve doesn't mean that puts him in the B category, because I'm being real nitpicky and saying he needs to do that. His pass rushing last year was crazy. That to expect that from a linebacker on a consistent basis, I'm going to tell you something. That is just as sure as the sun rises on the east and sets on the west. Expecting that type of pass rush production out of an off the line of scrimmage linebacker is tantamount to expecting a pathological liar to tell you the truth for a year straight. It's just not going to happen. So the linebacking core definitely they get an A. They get the job done. They show up. They week in and week out. They're going to do what they do. Week in and week out. If we can't count on nothing else, we can count on these linebackers to get it done, which, I mean, overwhelmingly they have. They've been the right guys for the job, and that's, it's been amazing to see. So far, we got the D-line with a B, the linebacking core with an A. Let's see where we go next. But speaking of jobs and folks getting the job done, I've got to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is where you can go to make sure that you're hiring the right folks, because these days, every new hire feels like a high stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates. That's why you have to have LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Please be aware the terms and conditions do apply. So the next group that I want to talk about is the secondary. Okay. As far as the secondary, the question would be how good or bad has the secondary been this season? Now, y'all know that I talked ad nauseum about the outside corners being the weakness of this team, and they were going to be the thing that concerned me the most and worried me the most, almost on this whole team, or basically on this whole team. That was the group that worried me the most. They have shut me up. They have got me quiet because the more film that I watch of them, the more that I see of them, the more I'm realizing, oh, these guys are doing it. They're doing it at a high level. At a high level. And I know some people aren't going to want to hear this, but the reality is when you're looking at a team that has the least points allowed in the conference in terms of points per game, you don't get there in today's game. You don't get there playing against a Texas Tech, and your corners are not doing the dog thing. That's just not how it's going to work. The third worst completion percentage in the conference so far. Third worst. Coming into today, of course. Third worst. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this defensive backcourt is doing their thing. And I talked about the corners being the concern, but the safeties were going to be a strength, and they've shown that. They've shown that repetitively. Other than I'd want to say like 3 to 4 plays all season. And when I say 3 to 4 plays, I mean that. If you look at the touchdowns that ECU scored for the most part, right? You look at the one big play where they had the receiver, I believe it was in the slot, or it may have been an outside receiver. They ran some type of either post or seam route. With that route, that play was terrible for our defensive backfield. That just wasn't good. But I want to say that that's the only play that I looked at and just thought to myself, what under God's green earth are these boys doing? What are y'all? How do you allow that? And that was one play against a team that I think folks will look back on favorably and say, like, this game, or that play rather, was the aberration and not the rule. That play was the one time where, there's always going to be, doesn't matter who you are, how you do it, if there's always going to be those 1 or 2 exceptions where things go awry and go. So with that being said, let's get to the defensive back group's grade. The DBs get an A-. They get an A-, and let me tell you, I know that you're thinking, why didn't this group get an A as well? Or just a flat A as well, like the linebackers? The only thing, and this is the thing, right? The safeties have jarred balls loose. They've created turnovers. The corners created turnovers, all that good stuff. They got the ball, all that. It's great, and I love it. The only thing that I would like to see a little bit better to fully firm up this A out of the defensive back group. The only thing that I would like to see a little bit better is 2 things. Number one, we haven't had a ton of these, but moments in which there are communication breakdowns to an extent, because there were times where there were some breakdowns against Texas Tech that they just could not take advantage of. They just did not do a good enough job of seeing those and exploiting those. But the next thing is this group has done a phenomenal job of tackling. Absolutely phenomenal job of tackling. They have also done a really good job of not getting the penalties as far as targeting or any of that good stuff. However, the one thing that I like to see at just a smidge that brings them up to an A for me, I would like to see this team jar balls loose, or see this defensive backfield jar balls loose just a little bit more. And I know the 7 interceptions is amazing. The 7 interceptions, again, that's what got them to the A. That's what got them to A-. Is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It just means that there's those little moments where, because again, that breakdown against ECU was really bad. It was really bad, but I don't want to tarnish this team's entire grade because of that. And that last those last couple of drives, which I don't think was their fault in terms of like what did or did not happen, so much as the play calling kind of hindered their ability. There was a lot of passiveness in those last couple of play calls, but A minus there. Special teams. Special teams gets an A. I'm sorry. Our special teams won us the ECU game. Our special teams won us that game. Period. Period. And it's not even about, again, I'm not counting what ECU did poorly as part of that. I'm not counting them missing a kick that wasn't blocked. I'm not counting them missing two extra point of field goal that weren't blocked. I'm not counting that. What I am counting is a block punt. What I am counting is Thayer Thomas's big return to set us up in excellent field position. What I am counting is the fact that our special teams have been a net positive in every single game. I do not remember a single game where I thought to myself, what are we doing out there on special teams? What are we doing? How are we doing it? This is disappointing to say the least. I don't remember a single time thinking that. So our special teams, our kickers are knocking them through. Our punters are pinning them deep. We're getting punt blocks. We're getting all the things that we need to me to say these special teams units are doing exactly what they need to do. Are doing exactly what they need to do. And I'm gonna segue here into another topic. The reality is, if all the other units hold serve, okay, and I mean this, running the offensive line, B minus, they could stand to get a little better. But even with the offensive line, they've allowed they're among the top offensive lines in the conference in terms of least sacks allowed. But with that being said, and actually that the fact that we aren't that good at getting sacks, while we do get pressures, while we do make folks want to move around, it kind of makes me want to change the DB's grade a little bit. But we're gonna stick with A minus because that's what I get. But anyway, if the offensive line gets a little better from that B minus, because of course short yardage needs to get better and all that good stuff, but they get a little better from there. But everybody else holds. Wide receivers keep doing their thing, getting open, all that. Running backs keep doing their thing. Demi keeps being a revelation. Defensive line keeps doing their thing. They've been a good group all year. There is not a world in which you can say that this defensive line group has been average or hurting us in any way. They haven't been outstanding. They haven't been to the point where I'm like, oh man, like these guys are they're the stars of the show. They're the unheralded star. But they've been good. The linebackers keep being all world like they are. The DBs, the defensive backs continue to show me and shut me up about what this team's weakness is. And special teams continues to dominate as they have. If Leary gets it together with the combination of all that, I said this to a friend yesterday, and they looked at me like I was crazy. But I'm going to say it again right now. With what we're seeing from these other units, if Leary is playing good ball going forward, after what we just saw in terms of Clemson versus Wake Forest, after what we have seen from some of these other teams in the ACC so far this year, this is going to be a playoff team if Leary gets it together and if these other units hold serve. You can say I jinxed it. You can say I don't care. I'm not going to. The reality is, all these other units hold serve and Leary picks it up. It's going to be ugly for the rest of the conference. It's going to be ugly. It's going to, because if you get Devin Leary to hitting those passes, hitting those deep balls and all that good stuff. Again, our receivers are doing the right thing. They just keep doing what y'all are doing. When they're doing the right thing, getting into positions that are winning positions, they win at the point of a catch. They win at all that good stuff. What then happens? You have to send out more folks or take folks away from the box to make sure that you have more than enough people to crowd up passing lanes. When you do that, you're looking at an offensive line that has been good in run blocking. You're looking at a running back core that has done an excellent job of breaking tackles in space. And then you say, well, what happens? What happens as a result? You're looking at a unit that is going to be dominant if Devin Leary gets it together. If we get the Devin of last year from this game forward, and then the defense, they're lights out. Special teams, lights out. If they continue to do what they're doing, plus a Devin Leary that's firing on all cylinders, oh, that's Katie Dids at the doorstep. Strike up the band. This team is going to get every single thing that they want. And I have no doubt in my mind about that. The question is, Can Devin Leary bring back that magic? Can he rebottle or recapture whatever it was last year that allowed him to play free and loose and just go and just do? That's the reality there. I'm betting that he gets it done. I'm not sure if these units can all sustain these grades, but we shall see. All right. I'm betting that they do, and I'm betting that Devin Leary gets it right as well. But we're going to see. And if you're a bettor, go to betonline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, and analysis every game that you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we're about to land this thing, but I hope that I've gotten through to you here the defensive special teams grades: defensive line B, linebackers A, DBs A-, special teams A. This team has something special on defensive special teams so far this year. They have something amazing so far this year. And yes, the competition will ramp up. Absolutely. But these grades weren't based on, these grades were not based on what I project these groups to be. It'll be what is on the tape. And compare that to the average Power 5 unit of whatever you do. Can I expect to see the same thing? I can expect to see a punt block for a touchdown in a pivotal game. Kickoff or a punt return that sets the team up in a position to win a football game out of every special teams unit. I can expect there to be defensive backs who have nights like Aiden White, who have the ability to jar balls loose like Tanner Ingle and Cyrus Fagan. I cannot make that happen. That's the reality. So these groups, I can't expect all of what these groups are doing. I can't expect the linebacker corps around the nation to have a team be the second least yards per play average, least points allowed in the conference, third least yard per carry in the conference, most interceptions in the conference, third worst completion percentage in the conference, number one defensive efficiency in the conference. I can't imagine that just because you played some not as good competition that every team does that. I can't. So with that in mind, that's why the lowest grade on this defense is a B. The lowest. And even with that B, they have a lot of room to grow. They have a lot to show what's going on there. So that's just my thoughts on this thing. Stick around while I give you the Kenton's keys for the game against UConn this evening, all right? Peace and love, y'all. And as always, go Pack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.